GM Moving is our shared Greater Manchester movement for movement. It is the things you do, it is the things I do, it is the things we all do to keep ourselves moving, to keep each other moving, and to design moving into everyday lives for a happier, healthier, more active Greater Manchester. This is because we recognise in GM the scale of the challenge we have in tackling inactivity and inequality, in addressing our crisis in health, the economy and the environment, and collectively recovering from the pandemic. And we know that the way to meet these challenges is by working together as a whole system to create the conditions for culture change, systems change, and behaviour change. GM Moving means different things to different people. These are just some of the ways people have described what it means to them. From ambition to a framework to a shared approach. For us to achieve our ambition, we need everyone to play their full part, to include our most influential leaders and partners. So core to this movement is a formal commitment and plan shaped and agreed by you alongside our Greater Manchester Mayor and Greater Manchester partners and Sport England. This maps an overview of the commitment and journey so far, from blueprint to plan to now shaping GM Moving in action, our strategy for the next decade. And so what? How do we know it's working? Well, we've observed change in different ways. Some things we've been able to count, like the increased number of people living active lives and the closing of inequality gaps around physical activity. But some things can't be easily counted, but are just as important in measuring systems change, like the growth of shared commitment and understanding across the system. As a learning system, we're training our attention to recognise and make sense of things that we see, hear, feel, and to encourage good open feedback. We want to make the less visible and tangible changes more observable, such as changes to the way the system's operating, the way that people are working, the level of connectivity and collaboration, and a growing sense of common purpose and alignment. We are seeing and hearing, for example, far more strength-based, person-centred conversations and language, an increased focus on supporting people to move in a way that works for them. And we're seeing a growing number and diversity of people joining and participating on and offline. These signs, patterns, shifts are being captured and reported by our evaluation team using a realist approach to measurement in complex systems. These signs of change help give us all as a system the confidence to hold our nerve and to boldly lead the way in doing things differently. And we all must take pride in these changes. The success belongs to everyone in GM, without ego or logo. So what have we seen? Well, we've seen our active lives data improve over this period until COVID hit. As you can see, the pandemic has had a very real impact on activity levels in GM over the last 12 months, just as it's impacted on every other aspect of our lives. So what does all this mean going forward? Well, that's for all of us to decide. This is our opportunity to pause, to acknowledge the realities and to lift our heads, look to the future, reevaluate, refocus and re-energise for sustained long-term change. Over the next few months, we want to hear what GM Moving in Action means to you and from other people, groups and organisations across Greater Manchester in all their diversity. And we want to know what you want to see change over the next decade. So together we can shape the movement in a way that's going to best support all of us to achieve our priorities and our joint endeavour to improve lives. So where are we now in this process? Well, we're not starting with a blank sheet. As a movement and a system, we've been listening and learning throughout the journey so far, and we've taken all of what we've heard to sketch a draft framework. Between January and April, we're convening the system in multiple ways to help gather different views and perspectives. We know from our learning journey so far that getting the co-design process itself right and bringing people together in a meaningful way for good conversations is key to how we grow relationships, connectivity, trust and shared purpose, and the shared advocacy and leadership that will propel us forward with clarity, courage and compassion. We now want to sense check our thinking so far with you and use the next phase to co-design the future strategy alongside you, seeking your help to make sure it's relevant to the full diversity of people and communities and the places that they live, work and play. We'll then be aligning with the new Greater Manchester strategy, ready, we hope, for launch in the summer. So here is our thinking so far, starting with what's strong and stays the same. Our core shared purpose hasn't changed. It's about supporting active lives and closing inactivity gaps, both in terms of the immediate future and addressing our urgent needs of today and supporting our collective recovery from COVID. and in how we build back better for future generations and a thriving city region. We think this can be broken down to 3 key themes. Who we are. Let's start with people, what matters to us, what motivates us, and the people around us. Let's support people to live better, healthier lives in a way that works for them. And there's the things that we do, the things that we have agency over, the spaces, networks, and organisations we interact with, how we support stronger, better, connected communities. And there's the places we go, the places we live, and the way we get around. And we need to design and create more sustainable, active, livable places. So what's changing? Well, the key shift is a focus in to really hone in on how we tackle inequalities together. This includes greater insight, both names and numbers, stories and stats. It includes growing a more diverse, inclusive workforce and greater advocacy, deeper community engagement and co-production, working alongside people and communities, more inclusive language, imagery and communications, ensuring resources go to people and places where they're needed most, and delivering structural changes to our policies, processes, system architecture and physical environments. So what does this look like? So it's about continuing to grow as an inclusive movement for movement, developing collective leadership and participation, building what we've seen over the last year, our ability to listen and adapt and respond to a continually changing landscape. It's about creating stronger interactions between formal structures and informal networks as we work alongside each other, knowing when to step back and when to step forward, building collective leadership, trust and advocacy across GM and a far more diverse workforce. It's about being more deeply rooted in our communities and places, reaching further into localities and neighbourhoods, building relationships, gaining deeper insight, making it relevant to people and their lives, channeling resources to people and places where they're needed most, and working alongside each other to grow autonomy, resilience and sustainability. And it's about creating the conditions and connectivity for a healthy ecosystem, delivering those structural changes to our policies, processes, architecture and environments that help us break down blockers and barriers and reduce the stresses on the system. And all of this is grounded and evidence-led. We've been working with teams of evaluators in localities across Greater Manchester for 3 years, drawing on international and national evidence to test, learn and translate the learning based on the drivers for change. Together, we're learning how to create the conditions for change so that we can apply the learning in all our work. So we're working together to put our points of practice into practice, to live our values as one GM. Our Greater Manchester Moving leadership and development work is helping to build system leadership capacity and diversity across the workforce. Our focus is now in making sure that we walk the talk so that we can accelerate the pace and scale of change. And when it comes to rooting in place, we're drawing on all we've learned together around place-based working for the local pilot and other locality work to ensure that our approach is real and relevant to people. We now want to move from pilot to whole system and make our learning accessible to others across the system to support Greater Manchester reform and transformation more widely. This is all part of our approach to develop a learning culture and to ensure an ever-growing understanding helps to inform wider work in complex systems in Greater Manchester. This continual process of reflecting, learning and translating into tangible action is vital to a population scale transformation. And together, all of this enables us to work and move forward with courage, clarity and compassion. Our key focus now is to have honest reflection on the key blockers and structural changes that are needed and to pay attention to the key enablers that we want to grow. Key to all this is our work with partners at both a national and local level. We've been working closely with Sport England as they develop their strategy and do the work together. They've been coming to our rooms and conversations, inviting us into theirs, so we can see we're increasingly moving in the same direction as they help unite a national movement. And at the same time, we're working with people and partners at a local and hyper-local level to align our strategic thinking, policy and practice and make sure that what we're doing works for everyone, recognising what works in one place may not work somewhere else, and building that honest, open, mature learning system that can listen and respond. Key to all of this is making sure that everything's absolutely anchored in our Greater Manchester principles and commitments, of which these 6 feel particularly pertinent as we go forward. We know that the way we cultivate our economy, our transport, our health and care, our BCSE sector are key to designing moving back into life, just as these goals are dependent upon people living healthy, active lives. So we're advocates for our net carbon targets, for applying Marmot principles, just as much as we encourage other people to boldly and unapologetically set out the case for moving more within the spaces that they occupy. And we continue to take a whole system approach to do more of the things that support active lives and less of the things that get in the way, recognising that these multiple layers all impact on whether or not someone is able to live an active life or not, and that there's no one single silver bullet to address inactivity. We know that telling people they should move more, that it's good for them, is not in itself going to make the change. We have to work together as a whole system to address the structural barriers and the wicked problems. We know that the social determinants of activity reflect the wider social determinants of health. So, for example, we can't address inactivity without also addressing poverty. So we need to more consistently apply an inequalities lens and really think about the demographic, spatial and socioeconomic inequalities and how they intersect. To do this well, it needs to be informed by evidence and insight. So we're getting smarter about how we work with partners locally and nationally to gather, pool and layer disaggregated data to collectively paint a much more comprehensive and clear picture. This will enable us to direct resources and support in a way that's going to make the biggest difference to tackle entrenched inequalities. And we're exploring how we best work alongside the emerging GM equalities networks and infrastructure, and how we play our full part in putting Marmot principles into practice. This means layering those demographic inequalities with socioeconomic deprivation. There's lots of examples of how we're doing this in practice. So what does this look like? Well, it means a longer term 10-year strategy. So we can walk the talk now whilst building a better Greater Manchester for future generations. This better aligns us with the Sport England 10-year strategy and our net carbon targets and transport strategy in Greater Manchester. It means really giving thought to how we get the best balance between universal support to enable everyone who currently lives an active life to continue to do so, and more targeted work to address inactivity and inequality. And it means shared one-year co-delivery plans, building the shared ownership and mutual accountability between key partners, so we can keep listening and responding with flexibility and agility to emerging needs and opportunities. So we're trying to bottle all of this down to a number of core principles, and we're really keen to get your thoughts on whether these resonate with you. So the key next step is to start to add the detail and the depth. We want to hear what your priorities are and explore together how being a part of GM Moving can help you achieve them. These are some of the things that we've heard so far around priorities for supporting people to live more active lives. It's about the role of physical activity in supporting our mental well-being, addressing deconditioning during the pandemic and the stresses on our physical health as part of our collective recovery. We've heard about the importance of working with the whole family, of supporting intergenerational connections and shared activity, and thinking about future generations. And when we talk about active communities, we've heard of the importance of working together for shared recovery, regeneration and reinvention, building the relationships between people, communities, anchor institutions and services within a neighbourhood, and building a sustainable future of sport and leisure that provides good work and is inclusive of all, and playing our part in supporting health and wealth creation. And when it comes to place, we've heard of the importance of local, of neighbourhoods, of access to local green and blue space, for safe, inclusive, active travel, and of making sure that the disparities across different neighbourhoods and the impact this has on whether people can live an active, healthy life is addressed, and the need to make our contribution to reducing carbon emissions and air pollution, to make it healthier for all of us to be active outdoors and protect the environment for future generations. We've mapped where physical activity is and isn't embedded in GM policy and system architecture, and we're looking at how we increase the case for change to make it a golden thread that runs through absolutely everything, from care to justice, health, housing, planning, transport, and the way we approach reform. And then we want to help show how this all comes together in the Greater Manchester ecosystem in a way that's accessible and meaningful, and bring it to life through people's stories, making GM Moving in action relevant to all people and all places, so we can all see, hear and feel the difference and be a part of it and be proud. It's about building this pride in our collaboration, and our hope for the future. So this is the overview of our engagement plan on a page. Over the next couple of months, we'll be hosting a mix of big themed conversations on key questions, priorities and policy areas that are emerging. For example, the role of GM moving in GM recovery, and how we make further progress towards ambitions for Greater Manchester as a walking and cycling city region, and how we tackle our inequalities together. These are some of the key questions that we're asking people for their feedback on. We'd love to hear from you. There is a survey that we'd love you to complete, and we'd love you to come and join in our conversations and to continue the conversation in your own home, streets, neighbourhoods and workplaces. If you want more information, this is all available on the GreaterSport website, and please do follow us at GM Moving on Twitter. Look out for booking details for our big conversations. And please get in touch if you've got ideas of your own as to other places we can convene a conversation, opportunities to come into the rooms that you're in and to listen in, to make sure we shape GM Moving in action that really is shaped by all of us.